Bobby Lee Claremont and the Criminal Element by Jeannie Mobley. Somewhere in Illinois, time unknown. I lay perfectly still. It seemed the safest thing to do. If Kelly was my unseen companion in the baggage car, my best chance was to remain hidden. The darkness in the car was complete, and that was to my advantage. I just had to remain silent, keep still, and hope he didn't stumble across me. At least, that had seemed like the best plan, until I heard the scrape of a match on a nearby trunk, and a moment later a lantern flared to life, casting long, wavering shadows around me where I lay face down on the floor. Still, I didn't move. It seemed unlikely lying still would save me now, but I didn't know what else to do. Someone stepped around the trunks beside me, and a booted foot prodded my leg. "You dead?" Terence asked. I shot to my feet, propelled by surprise and relief. "Terence!" Leon was standing behind him, holding the lantern high and grinning. "Granddaddy told us you was in here. Thought you might like some company," he said. All I could do in response was nod. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, my heart might jump right out of it. "Come on," Leon said. "There's usually room toward the back. We got 3 hours on to Champagne. We might as well get comfortable." They led the way over and around the trunks and crates, suitcases, and canvas bags of mail. Fewer trunks crowded the back corner, just as Leon had said, and we shifted them around to create a cozy little space where we could all stretch out together to sleep. We didn't lie down right away, though. I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to sleep again after the fright they'd given me. I was too keyed up and jumpy to even think of sleep. I guess Terence and Leon felt the same way, because they sat down on crates and boxes and looked at me as if waiting for a bedtime story. I didn't say anything. I knew they wanted the details of what had happened, but I didn't want to think about it, let alone repeat it for their entertainment. They weren't letting me off the hook that easily, though. "Who was chasing you, Bobby Lee? Was he really trying to kill you?" Terence asked. "It was Kelly, and yeah, he was trying to kill me." Leon looked skeptical. "Did he try to shoot you? I didn't hear no shots." "He had the gun in his pocket, and he reached for it. I didn't stick around to see what he did after that." "Well, you're safe here, Bobby Lee," Terence said. I nodded. "I'm mighty glad I ran into y'all's granddad. Otherwise I'd be stuck back there in Centralia or worse." I didn't really want to think about the worse. "And you'd never get to Chicago to see your Yankee aunt," Terence said. "Don't you get it, Terence?" Leon said. "There's no aunt in Chicago. He's right off the streets, just like we thought." "Is that true?" Terence asked. I nodded. "It's true. I was heading to Chicago in hopes of joining up with the criminal element. But I don't see that there's much chance of that happening now." "But," Terence said, his little face scrunching up with concern, "but you're no criminal, Bobby Lee." I shrugged. "How do you know what I am?" "'Cause we're friends," Terence said, looking hurt. "So? Seems to me you're criminals, too." "We are not," Leon said, bristling. "You just take that back, Bobby Lee." "You're not supposed to be on the train," I pointed out. "That don't make us criminals. And you snooped in the baggage. That was your idea." I shrugged. "I guess nobody's really honest in this world, except maybe little babies like Jimmy Jr. Well, we're not hurting nobody, not taking advantage either. I don't see why you'd want to be like them, why you'd want to take money from widows and babies." Now it was my turn to bristle. "I don't. I want to help Nanette O'Halloran. I just don't see how I can." Leon raised his eyebrows like he didn't believe me. "Why, so you can take her money instead? You said before you don't even know her." "You wouldn't take her money, would you, Bobby Lee?" Terence said. "You fell in love with her right off." "I did not," I said, though I could feel my face turning redder than a crawfish in a gumbo. "Sure you did. Everybody does," Terence said. "Clovis said she's the sweetheart of the jazz scene." "Not everyone," I said, thinking again about the sharp expression that never quite left Kelly's eyes. "I bet that's how it was for Jimmy O'Halloran, too," Terence continued. "One look and he was mad in love. Don't you think, Leon?" "I don't know. I reckon you should ask him, not me," Leon said. Terence and I both looked at him, confused. With a mischievous grin, he nodded at the box under Terence's skinny backside. "You're sitting on him." Terence leapt up like there were hot coals in his underpants. In an instant he had crossed the open floorboards and wedged himself into the little space available between Leon and me. Sure enough, The long, low box on the other side of the sleeping space we'd made for ourselves was the pine coffin I'd seen them load in New Orleans. "I've been sitting on a dead man?" Terence whispered, his eyes huge as saucers. "You don't have to whisper. You won't wake him up," Leon said. "Are you sure?" Terence said, still in a whisper. "I've heard the dead wake up after midnight sometimes, especially them that's been wronged." "Well, why don't we open the box and see?" Leon said, getting to his feet. "Who knows what he can tell us? We'll need a crowbar to get the lid off. Must be something round here that'll work." Terence pressed himself hard against me, trying to bury his head under my arm or behind my back. "I've never seen a dead person before," he whimpered. "That ain't true, Terence. You saw Mama laid out." "But she didn't sit up and talk," Terence said, still trying to burrow. "I bet you've never seen a dead person either, have you, Bobby Lee?" Leon taunted. "I saw my mammon, too, and some babies at the Sisters of Charitable Mercy." "You seen dead babies?" Terence said, peeking out from under my arm. I nodded. "Sometimes women who don't want their babies leave them on the doorstep at night for the sisters to take care of. But sometimes before the nuns can find them." I shrugged. "Babies need a lot of care, you know." Terence pulled his head out from under my arm. "Why wouldn't a lady want her baby? Our mama always said her babies was her whole world." "My mother would have been better off if she'd gotten rid of me," I said. "She'd have had a better home, better food. She wouldn't have been so poor all the time." "Pops always said we was eating 'em out of house and home, that's why we was poor. But Mama said everything else about us made 'em rich. I bet your mama felt the same way," Terence said. I shook my head, but memories flooded back of all the times Mama had left good positions so she could be with me. I had thought I'd been nothing but a stone around her neck all those times, but maybe she had been happier with me. Maybe she'd felt the same yearning that I'd been feeling and been pulled away from those jobs by it. Just like how I'd let it ruin my chances for a new life in Chicago because I fell for Mrs. O'Halloran and her baby. "It's ladies with no husbands who have to get rid of their babies, Terence," Leon said. "Have to? Why?" Terence asked. Leon was poking through a toolbox in the corner. "They just have to, that's all. You'll understand when you're older." Terence frowned. "Will Miss Nettie have to get rid of her baby? She ain't got a husband." "But she had one," I said. "It's different. She's a widow. It's ladies who are never married who have to give up their babies." "But she weren't married," Terence said. "Of course she was, to Jimmy O'Halloran," I said. "They weren't," Leon said. "They couldn't have been." "Why ever not?" "Granddaddy says old Jim Crow won't let colored folks marry white folks," Terence said. I stared at Terence, confused. "Jimmy O'Halloran was black?" I said. Terence giggled. Leon straightened from the toolbox with a big grin on his face and a crowbar in his hand. "He wasn't black, he was Irish. But I bet he's kind of blue or green by now. Let's find out." Terence let out an ear-splitting screech and burrowed his head back under my arm. "Leave it alone, Leon," I said. "You chicken, Bobby Lee?" "No, but you're going to give Terence nightmares something fierce." Leon sat down on the coffin, looking contrite. "I was just fooling, Terence. The dead don't rise after midnight. He's just laid out in there in a fine suit all ready to go into the ground. It's the famous Jimmy O'Halloran himself. Don't you want to see?" Under my arm, Terence's head shook vigorously back and forth and a little whimper escaped. Leon seemed to be weighing the crowbar in his hands, deciding what to do. I decided changing the subject was the best course of action. Besides, I was still confused. "What'd you mean about white folks and colored folks?" I said again. When I looked at Leon, he was smirking again. "She's fooled you good, ain't she?" "What are you talking about?" "Nanette LeBlanc is colored." "No, she's not," I protested. "Sure she is. Why else would she be singing in our granddaddy's Baptist church and performing all over town with the Clovis Dupre Orchestra? She's colored folks, same as Terence and me. That's why Jimmy O'Halloran couldn't have married her." I shook my head. "But I've seen her," I insisted. But even as I said it, I was seeing her rich black hair and beautiful full lips in a different light. "She's an octoroon," Terence said. 1/8 Negro. Leon nodded. "Granddaddy can remember back before Jim Crow when Creoles like her lived on the other side of town and mixed with white folks easy as pie. But now white folks don't figure that's right. They figure even one drop of colored blood makes a person black, and there's colored folks in her family back-a-ways. So you're saying even though her skin is white, she ain't? I said. That makes no sense. It don't have to make sense. It's the law, Leon replied. She's only been white since Jimmy O'Halloran asked her to be. But didn't colored folks know? I asked. All the colored folks in the 8th Ward know. Ain't no keeping secrets there. But white folks don't take the trouble to know us folks in colored wards. There's some advantages to being invisible sometimes, Leon said. So when she started stepping out with Jimmy, I reckon there was some whispering here and there, but white folks didn't know for sure that she was colored, and black folks weren't telling. I thought about that and about why she'd said she didn't want to stay in New Orleans. She had a past, she'd said. I thought she'd meant life on the stage, but now I saw she couldn't stay. Too many folks knew the truth. Folks who had been willing to look the other way for Jimmy's sake, or for their own convenience. But they wouldn't look away for long now that she was a woman on her own. As soon as the white folks of the city realized she was black, she'd lose everything. If she wasn't legally married to Jimmy, she'd had no claim to the Cajun Queen. She sure fooled me, I said. I couldn't see any reason why she and Jimmy wouldn't have been married. I guess she has to fool Jimmy's people in Chicago the same way. If she can fool them, she'll make herself white for good, Leon said. Do you think Sergeant Hayward knows? I asked. Could be. If he's been investigating Jimmy's past, I'm sure he's been digging around hers, Leon said. Folks from our part of town don't necessarily file all their doings with the courthouse, babies and marriages and such, so he probably can't prove her family's past with paperwork. But it wouldn't be too hard to find out through word of mouth. Plenty of folks saw her on stage with Clovis Dupre before Jimmy started segregating her at the Cajun Queen. I nodded, thinking. Hayworth was looking to pin Jimmy's murder on someone. Nanette and Bugeaud were both in his sights, but the more I thought about it, the more Nanette seemed to be the easier target. Digging around Nanette's past, Hayworth probably had enough evidence to make a good case that Nanette and Jimmy had never married, but not being married wasn't a crime, so he was waiting for her to commit one. Claiming to have been married to Jimmy so as to receive insurance money, like she planned to do in Chicago, that was a crime. And as soon as she made the claim, Hayworth would have her. Of course, if she didn't claim the money and use it to pay off Kelly, Kelly would have her. The only way out from Nanette LeBlanc was to find a way to prove she and Jimmy were legally married. I recalled Hayworth's orders to me. I need you to find out how they plan to scam folks in Chicago once they get there. This must have been what he meant. How Nanette planned to convince Jimmy's folks she'd married their son. But proving that looked to be impossible. I doubted the testimony of Bugeaud and Malcolm would carry enough weight. And even if they all testified that they had witnessed such a wedding, Hayworth could then arrest her for trying to pass as white and marrying a white man, which was illegal. And what would Jimmy's family do if they learned she was 1/8 black? I didn't know if that mattered in Chicago. After all, in Illinois, blacks were allowed to mingle with whites on the train. Did that mean Yankees didn't care about that kind of thing? Did it mean that Nanette really could have been married to Jimmy if they had met in Chicago instead of New Orleans? I suppose it didn't matter. Once Hayworth heard her make the claim to marrying Jimmy in New Orleans, either she was lying to defraud the insurance company, or she was admitting to an illegal marriage. My blood boiled at the thought. She had loved Jimmy. They had a baby together. She deserved the life insurance money. That was what it was for, taking care of his family after he died, making sure they would be able to fulfill that powerful longing without it destroying them. It wasn't right that a few drops of Negro blood should deny people love and comfort. Nanette had mingled with rich white society and with poor black folks, and everywhere she went, everyone loved her. Now they would all despise her when she was dragged back to New Orleans unmasked. People would judge her by some stupid law about a few drops of blood rather than by the warmth and beauty they'd experienced in her company. And once they all despised her for her lie, how hard would it be for Hayworth to get her convicted of murdering Jimmy for the money so she could continue the deception? She would be hanged for her crime, and poor Jimmy Jr. would end up an orphan, probably at the Sisters of Charitable Mercy. No wonder my prayer book had fallen open to the prayer of St. Jude. This was about as hopeless a case as I could imagine, and the only way out that I could see would be divine intervention, something a sinner like me hardly dared ask for. I did know one person who had God on her side, but if I called upon her aid, I'd end up right back under her thumb. I wanted to help Nanette, but was it worth my freedom? My bright criminal future? I pulled myself out of my thoughts and glanced again at my companions. Despite his fear, Terence had rolled himself in a blanket and gone to sleep. Are we closed in here now, all the way to Chicago? I asked Leon. They'll open up the baggage car in Champaign. Plenty of folks get on and off there, as well as a heap of mail. That ain't until about 4:30 or 5, though, so we'd best bed down now and get a few hours of sleep. We settled Terence more comfortably, pillowed on Leon's shirt. Then Leon and I stretched out beside him, and Leon blew out the lantern. The baggage car was utterly black inside. I lay awake, staring blindly into the darkness, unable to close my eyes. I ain't a criminal, Bobby Lee, Leon whispered after a while. Since our mama died, there's been nobody to take care of Terence. And since Granddaddy's rheumatism got so bad in his back he can't do his job proper. I might be breaking the law and by being on this train without a ticket and helping Granddaddy out, but that don't make me a criminal. I got a family that needs me. I know, Leon, I whispered back. I'd do the same thing in your shoes. I know, Leon said, 'cause you're no criminal either. That's why you want to help Miss LeBlanc. I didn't answer. I just let the words slip away into the darkness. He was right on both counts. Now all I could do was send up a prayer to St. Jude and hope Nanette LeBlanc was praying too.